Okay, so confidentiality is the next thing we want to talk about. That's another major potential area for malpractice. Hipaa, everybody's familiar with Hipaa. Hipaa is the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act, and it created some very strong penalties for either intentionally or unintentionally allowing the confidential health information of others of the patient to be seen by someone else. The major thing with HIPAA is a lot of people think that you can talk about patients as long as you don't use names, date of birth. But in a small facility, for example, there might be only one baby born this week at McCurtain Memorial. There might be 8, but there might be just one. And if I am talking in the community about being present at a birth and the mom didn't know which dad was the dad, there were 2 different people, and it was just a hot mess. If I'm talking about that in public, it's not that hard to figure out if only one baby was born this week at McCurtain Memorial. Okay. So it's really easy to share information unintentionally. Be careful about talking in stairwells. Be careful about talking in the cafeteria, in hallways. We want to go into more private areas to talk when we're able to do so. In areas where patients are separated by curtains, it can be really challenging, and we want to be careful how we approach sensitive information in those situations. So another thing that we need to think about, there are some other unintentional HIPAA violation areas. So another thing we want to think about is social media. Make sure you're not posting anything about patients on social media. But I'll tell you that one major source of HIPAA violation is the church prayer list. And I've been asked before, I've been said, well, you were over there with your students this week. So-and-so's in the hospital. How are they doing? Can't tell you. Okay. Just don't talk about any patients with anyone except that patient. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about, or the next, piece of this I want to talk about is risk management. Most facilities have some sort of risk management plan. Larger facilities have a whole department. In smaller facilities, that may be combined with another role. The risk management department, or the risk management plan, is a plan to prepare for potential litigation, because healthcare is an area where we're always at risk for some litigation. Risk management may coordinate with quality management, because if they see patterns that may increase legal risk, those things are probably also increasing risk to patients. And so quality management may work to improve the system. Incident or occurrence reports go to risk management or quality management. They are an internal document. They are not part of the medical record. You should never mention the occurrence report in the medical record. That should not be done. If the plaintiff attorney is not aware of the occurrence report, they may not be able to bring that into evidence. The reason for that is we want to use those documents to identify patterns that may indicate a systemic change is needed. On an occurrence report, you're not writing up a person, you are writing up an incident. Okay, that may be an error, that may be an accident, but you're not writing up a person on an occurrence report. On the occurrence report, you want to state clearly what happened. You want to state objective facts, and then anything subjective, you want to state that as patient reported, nurse stated, CNA stated. You want to make sure that you're making everything very objective. Don't draw conclusions, don't blame, don't show emotion, don't share opinions, don't write in a defensive tone. So say for a fall, if the fall was not observed, you're not going to state patient fell. You're going to state patient found in floor by CNA. Patient family reports, he rolled out of bed. Okay. You're not saying the patient rolled out of bed. You can only say what you observe. That's really a good way to document in the medical record anyway, but on an occurrence report, you've really got to state that very, very neutrally. Okay, use neutral language. On the occurrence report, you may be asked for your opinion. Then when you describe the incident, they'll give opinions. You may be asked what you think may have prevented the incident. And that's when you would say something about use of side rails or whatever. Protection against legal action. Individuals should have malpractice insurance. Institutions have malpractice insurance, but the institution insurance company is there to protect the institution, not you. So individuals should have malpractice insurance. One other thing I want to talk about, another legal area that has actually gotten more press in the last few years is illegal obtaining reimbursements illegally or fraud. Medicare, the government cares if you defraud Medicare, insurance companies care if you defraud them. Fraud can be either completely falsifying an incident or a visit or a medication or treatment, but more often it's by upcoding. Upcoding is coding for something that pays better than what was actually done. Upcoding is not the same thing as correct coding. Sometimes if things can be correctly coded in a way to maximize reimbursement, but we should not be coding things as something they were not. Okay. There are some other legal issues. We talked a bit about supervising unlicensed employees, but there are some other very specific legal pitfalls that can come up that you need to just be aware of. Telemedicine and telephone triage are two areas that kind of have some murky legal ground. Telemedicine got really popular with the pandemic. Telemedicine may actually involve, or telehealth, if you're a nurse doing telehealth, may involve practicing across state lines. And so you need to make sure you're looking at the legality of does your license apply in the state that patient is in, or in what state should you be licensed if you're doing telehealth. Telephone triage. There are actually facilities that have organized telephone triage organizations or departments. They usually work from protocols. I actually did that at Parkland briefly 20-something years ago, and it was an interesting job. It was an office job, not bedside, but it was interesting. There are insurance companies that use telephone triage, and at one time Sooner Care had telephone triage. I don't know if they still do, but telephone triage is when patients call a nurse line, and the nurse uses protocols to determine what level of care that patient needs. So does that patient need to be seen? Do they need some home care advice? They're fine. They just need some home care advice. Do they need to be seen by a primary care provider? Do they need to be seen in urgent care? Do they need to be seen in the emergency room, or do they need an ambulance? Telephone triage has some legal risks because you are making determinations about the level of care needed, but you can't put your eyes on that patient. You're only going by what information they're giving you on the phone. So it is legally safest to do that with a set of very established protocols. If then, be very careful about doing triage on the telephone if you're working in an acute care setting, because we're asked to do that informally quite a bit. Two areas where you're going to see a lot of that are going to be ER and OB. People call the ER. I don't know if I should bring someone in. They've got some, bring them in. They're going to always tell you, if you think they need to be seen by a doctor, bring them in. And there's a reason for that. If you're that ER nurse and you're answering the phone and a patient is telling you something, or a family member is telling you something, you may not be getting the full picture. So be very, very, very cautious about giving advice over the phone. Most facilities have a policy against giving any kind of medical or healthcare advice over the phone in an unstructured way. And that's because they may not be telling you the whole story, or they may not, it may not be intentional. They may not know what's important. So you may not be getting the full picture of what's going on with that patient. We also get a lot of that in OB. OB units usually do have some triage questions that they ask. They'll ask, is your water broken? Are you bleeding? Is the baby moving? Are you having contractions? And then some of those may indicate, hey, you need to get in here right now. But then at the end of that conversation, you're still going to end with, if you're concerned, just come in and let's get checked out. And that's because we don't want to be in the position of telling someone stay home when they really need care. There also are some life and death issues involving that the legal system's involved in. And some of these have had some changes legally because there's political pieces of this. If you think that nursing is not political, or that nurses should not be political, I want you to really rethink that. And I don't want to tell you what your politics should be, but I want to tell you that life is political. Politics affects people's daily lives, and politics affects health. So get involved in politics, at least vote, okay? At least vote, because politics affects patients. So some of the legal issues surrounding life and death have to do with abortion and fetal rights, human experimentation, patient rights, patient right to self-determination, advanced directives. And I know that you've heard and you've been exposed to all of those conversations. I just want you to think of what they mean as far as politics and healthcare. Okay, so the next section, we're going to talk about professionalism.